Today is fine day in California.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Pretty good. It's been a good week. Screecher's back on track, and just want to everyone know real quick before we kind of get started on things. Beta reader copies for Lost Kingdom are due. So if you haven't done that yet, please send it to the email provided in the thing. But today we are talking about writers, in particular authors, and like some issues I've seen with the community. But here's the thing. I'm not a published author. By the way, Chris, can you hear my fan, or should I turn it off?
I can hear it, but it's not disruptive. It's just in the background.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's kind of hot out here. I don't want to turn my AC, but so I feel like I'm not really qualified. So, like any good person, I called in some experts. So let me bring them in here. So I got a bit of an all-star cast here. I got the Iron Age King and Queen here. First off, we have the orctacular person, John Douglas. How you doing, my friend?
John. Doing good. I feel like my camera should be swapped around. Can I swap myself around? No, I can do that. All right. Now it feels like I'm actually talking to people. Also, don't want to flip my book title around.
Yeah, I got to get in that promo.
There we go. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. And then last and most importantly, not least, we have the watcher and both the rider of the storms and the damned. We have R.H. Snow.
I love you. I love both of you. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. So I guess we'll just
second. I'm actually going to be off air just for a second. I have to send out a thunderstorm watch that we just went under. It's popped up right as I went live on TV, and so I have to phone to send it out. So it'll be about 5 minutes, and I'll be back in just a second. I've just got to send out this warning to all my people, and then I will be back because we're actually having some very severe weather today, and that's one of the things that interrupts me as a writer is getting that done. Every time there's a storm, I have to stop and do storm watch. So let me do that real quick, and I will be right back with you. Okay?
All right. So in the meantime, I guess we'll just kind of like everyone on this panel is a writer in some fashion or another. So like I feel like we'll kind of just go around and say like some of the issues we've had as writers and maybe some of the issues we found with other writers. Let's go to the person who never shies away from battle. John.
Never shy away. No, I do need to go grab my coffee though, real quick.
Oh my God! Everyone's running away.
Yeah, I definitely don't run away, but I'm running away.
Oh my gosh, like I start the stream, everyone immediately leaves. Do I like smell or something? Like it's just kind of,
Digital smell.
Digital smell. Yeah, sounds about like it. So Chris, let's go for you then. What are some issues you've had with a writer, and what are some issues you've encountered with other writers that you'd like to talk about?
Honestly, I don't think I've ever had any issues with any other writers. In fact, it's weird, but like, especially with like the indie books and stuff, I kind of see them as like a mini tuition of sorts. Like I'll read other people's work and then, look at their successes or their, lack of successes or whatever and be like, oh, okay, well, they're, best lessons to learn are from somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that.
So, I mean, I'm appreciative of all the writers. As
far writers as who actually do stuff, that would be my thing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like things in writing, like my biggest problem is just I don't like that, because we're indie, it's about us and not about our products. And I understand why.
Yeah.
But like we're not going to win the popularity contests, and it's futile. It's kind of cruel to try to do that. It's like not everybody is cut out to be a YouTuber. Not everybody's cut out to be a social media, whatever. And it just seems like writing is hard enough.
Like, do you think
You
Stephen
know?
King could have ever made it as a YouTuber?
Oh God, no. Well, look at Alan Moore. I mean, that guy is like, you know, a vacuum.
Alan Moore could be a
charisma.
Reddit mod. Like, he would make a very good Reddit mod. But that's
Yeah,
about it.
he gets pissed off because people like his characters wrong.
Nobody hates Alan Moore more than Alan Moore does.
You sound like a Star Wars shell. Julian.
So speaking of which, I have been going back and forth because it was one thing to like detract on Star Wars on social media, right? When everything was bad, but now Andor season 2 come out, and by all measures, apparently it passes the bar of like good acting and good writing. It's objectively a good show.
I feel like they're glazing it a little bit too hard, in my opinion.
I think they're glazing it a
putting
little
me
too
off.
hard, but it's unfortunately given the shills like this ammunition, the idea that they can rub the one success in our face as if it negates the Acolyte, Rise of Skywalker, all that other crap that came before. Like it's made Star Wars fans even more insufferable. I had a post that's been popping off because now they're going like, oh, you can't enjoy you won't be able to enjoy the original trilogy now without this Andor fans going, but look at all the Andor, what all happened in Andor, all the people who didn't get celebrated at the end of A New Hope. Like,
that's the whole point of the
It's maybe-
show. That's the whole point of Andor and Rogue One, is that in war, the people who sometimes do the most important things are forgotten about. Like, that's the whole entire point.
I wish I could forget them. I wish I could forget them and the people that are fans of the people who are forgotten. And I've been saying this lately, in all honesty, the Star Wars discourse, the Star Wars product has made me dislike Star Wars so much. I wish I had a time machine so that I could go back in time and bully my younger self into never becoming a Star Wars fan. It's just a pain in the ass at this
Here's
point.
what I want to do. I want to get a copy of Rise of Skywalker, okay? A DVD copy. All right, DVD. I want to time travel back to 1999, and I want to take, like, the people who say, like, Jar Jar is, like, the worst character, like, here, I'm going to pop this into your 1999 DVD player. Here's a film called Rise of Skywalker. This is how it ends. And instantly they're going to be like, oh, my God. This, like, because Rise of Skywalker makes the Phantom Menace looks like Empire Strikes Back by comparison.
You know, Razor Fist, I know I'm not a fan, but he was the only guy when Disney bought the trilogy, bought the IP, that accurately called it and said, by the end of this, you will beg to have George Lucas back. And he was
It didn't
right.
take long.
You
It
know,
didn't take long.
that's the thing is like the prequels I didn't like. I hated them, but I didn't walk out of the theater feeling offended. Like, I wasn't upset. I didn't feel insulted. I just like, okay, it's not for me. Whatever, I'm out. Disney successfully made me hate their shit. Like, I was like, are you kidding me?
I feel like at best, The Force Awakens could have gotten away with what it did, which was basically an amalgamation of the best hits of the whole original trilogy and some of the prequels, if the sequel had managed to land it and move the story forward in a meaningful way, which it
Yeah,
did
because
not.
if you go back and look at A New Hope is not the best quality-wise. If you look at it in isolation, it's a bit. It's the other movies that help elevate it.
It's a very straightforward film. It's a very good, quick, straightforward, simple film, and its simplicity works in its favor.
Yeah.
Luke is kind of almost annoyingly naive.
Well, yeah, but like the original film could stand by itself. A Force Awakens can't. You know?
That is true. Which, by the way, John, I actually did base Orion off of A New Hope era Luke.
I mean, you wouldn't be alone in basing, the kid.
I can't fight the Empire. I got work to do.
Yeah. It's not hard to tell, where a lot of people's influences lie. I mean, and the hero's journey is still a very popular kind of framework to work
and
with.
it will be for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It was popular before now.
Like, Joseph Campbell didn't create the hero's journey. He just connected all the patterns.
Yeah. And it's not the only successful framework to work with. It's just the one that's been the most wildly successful, I think, in the last 30, 40 years. But as things have kind of gone on, I think without the proper responsible God, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Stewardship.
Ownership of the IP, I guess, and oversight from a dedicated creative, without the kind of storytelling that Star Wars needed, which was much more serialized.
Mhm.
I think we're kind of looking at Star Wars being more of a Gen X success than anything, because it's
Gen
the
X
only
and
time it really
millennials.
works.
I would say Gen X and millennials because
Millennials overanalyzed it way too much. I get into contentions with nerds because they start getting into what I call stupid nerd questions.
video essay mode.
Yeah, then listen, the stupid nerd questions are the questions you don't need to ask.
Like, why
The
don't they
questions
just
that
turn
weren't
out their
meant to be
lightsaber
answered.
in mid-combat?
No, I'm talking about the minutia of, well, where was this character? Why don't the characters stop and go to the bathroom? You get that a lot in the literary
Yeah.
world, which is a repeat of, how come you never show the female characters in the middle of their period? And I say that as exactly as Rory Snow comes back.
Let's run.
Timing!
But you see that every now and then, right? You see
Yeah.
female readers asking, why do we not have the
hilarious
characters go to
thing.
the bathroom? Why do the
The
female
legends-
characters not changing their pads or their tampons or something? It's because that's minutia that doesn't need to get worried about.
What's hilarious is Legends continuity actually answered that. They have this thing called a refresher, which is their version of the bathroom. A refresher bowl is the toilet. Like, oh, I got to hit up the fresher, or whatever.
We're reading a story, not a travelogue, right? We don't need to know the character's every bowel movements.
I wonder where I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so go ahead.
And John, so I actually wrote this into the story. One of the reasons people don't put it in there is because if you hadn't been there, you don't know. But secondly, I've had so many people say, how on that, and this is, dudes don't know, but women, if you've ever been camping out, it's actually a big deal. So having this sort of thing about like what happens if you make it part of the story, in fact, it becomes an important plot point in the future. How many times do you have to pull over with somebody in your car with you? And now that you have a fantasy woman, if you've ever driven more than 50 miles with a woman in the car, and maybe there are magical unicorns out there that can go more than 50 to 100 miles without asking, can we pull
Or they're
over?
a nurse.
Wow,
Please?
50.
Can we pull over? And so I came up with this idea. I said, really? Like, that happens right in the middle of a battle. What happens if you got to go? Like, you can't just duck behind a tree. It doesn't happen. You're one. And so I literally wrote this into the story that she, how are you going to work this in? And it becomes a running gag of sorts. He's got to pull over. You got to park the pony. I've got to get off. And so literally it's written into the story, and absolutely nobody fussed about it as minutia yet. Maybe John will. John, are you going to ream me out for this? Because literally it's written into the story, baked in as one of the plot points that later on absolutely wrecks a battle for her because she has to go. And
because you're writing it in as a story element. The people making that complaint just want it to be there for some sort of overblown female representation.
Guten Tag, Nix, Guten Tag.
It's part of the story itself, and so and since we're dealing with human reproduction, it actually comes up in the story because it's long since anybody's ever done anything like this. They have no idea what's happening. One character thinks she's dying. Literally terrifies them to death that this thing is, doing what it does. I'm not going to go into that here because I'm a lady. But yes, the idea that something that does that for a week out of a month and still lives is obviously a monster. But so,
oh God,
for real, I'm a woman. I can do it.
No, you're reminding me of this one. I was working at a restaurant once. This guy, he was a cook. He was a bit of a woman hater. He got screwed over in a divorce. He once said to me, "Nick, don't trust anything that bleeds for a week and doesn't die."
That's an old. That joke is so old. It might as well be drawing Social Security. Believe me.
Oh, it's probably way older than that. It's the fear of it is so palpable. But writing
I bet.
Actually, a part. Yes, the whole point is anything you write into the story should advance the story somehow. It should make the story a better story, not just we have to do. You're right. It becomes we do those things when we're on a campaign. If we're doing a TTRPG, yeah, we have this. Oh, you better, write this in. If you're going to do this, you're going to take a turn-based turn to do it. And I think that's actually where a lot of writers are having issues with it, because they started off as gamers and they started off doing tabletop and they love the adventure. So they end up writing it as they would if they were on a campaign. And
and a lot of fantasy novels are just direct adaptations of like people's campaigns. And a lot of fantasy writers like, I want to take the tabletop experience and put in a book.
Which, if done right, can work.
I think it does really well, actually.
I'm just going to say, I think.
Let me show you this little book. You may have heard of this.
Yeah, that's where I was inspired. Yeah.
It's had some. Essentially, the first book was that, and then they kind of went more past that. I'll tell you another.
Dragonlance, was it Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms? They're actually directly based off a campaign.
That was Dragonlance. It was
Dragonlance, the first book.
Showed. Yeah,
they basically novelized that, and not for nothing. Critical. If you watch the shows on Amazon Prime, Vox Machina was based off the first campaign of Critical Role, which I did watch, and I got to tell you, it did a great job of taking the high story elements from that campaign and condensing it down into just the way the story unfolded as they played it. Yeah. Naturally, there was a lot left on the floor. I mean, my God, it's a 1,000-hour campaign over 120 something episodes.
They'll spend 20 minutes arguing with who gets to flirt with who.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Record of Lodos did it too. Dude. Yeah. That's what I do with my thing. I got 30 years of notes. Like, I got reams of paper, and a lot of it is, it's like, okay, what part makes a good story?
Many trees have sacrificed themselves for Chris's success.
That's right. The war effort needs more trees.
Isn't it literally your book about the war on trees anyway?
Yes.
It's kind of ironic.
What the hell with the trees? Damn trees think they can do what they want.
Oh, gosh. But yeah, one of the things for me, the issues that I have with writers, for one, a lot of them try to make it like this, like kind of like this two-tiered system. It's like you have the self-pub and the indie pub people, and like the self-pub people kind of have like this air, like a lot of them have like an air of superiority, and like the down and indie, you guys know what I'm talking about?
I have encountered very little of that in the indie fantasy spaces. There's I would say most people are very in tune with the rising tide lifts all boats mentality. And I'm definitely one of them myself. A lot of us really, even if they don't read your books, they're still cheering on your success a lot of times. Especially some of the more well-known names that have really started to catapult to the next level. The guys like Ryan Cahill, and very recently Matt Dinneman, who wrote Dungeon Crawler Carl, because he's about to receive mainstream appeal because he's got a TV show based on his books. He got a Trad Pub deal.
Oh hell yeah!
So yeah, if you want to build your channel up, get them Dungeon Crawler Carl reviews out there before that TV show hits, because that algorithm wave is coming, my friends.
Yeah,
probably sooner than you think. That the only thing that I have, if there is some sort of elitism and whatnot going on, and I have no doubt there's some cliquish elitism going on, some of it behind the scenes. It hasn't popped up in front of my face. Although I have seen some behind my back sniping, I have started to experience just a little bit of some people very obviously trying to being a little envious of where I am in my indie career.
It's the price of success.
Compared to where the crabs in a bucket mentality.
Well, I've experienced it on the comic side for my.
I have noticed that the cosmic forces demand mediocrity, and when you, like a sine wave, when you rise up above that mediocrity, there's this equal force that grows that wants to pull you back down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're friends with everybody until you're successful, and suddenly all these enemies come out of nowhere.
Well, I think that is just this part of human nature. They want to hear that you're still struggling with something, that there's something else. But also the part where, and I've noticed this, even me, I'm like, you make a sale or you make several, and are you having a great day? And you're like, I want to put this on there, and immediately I know that it's going to be, somebody's going to feel bad when they see it. And that actually is a litmus test for a lot of people. Does your success make other people feel bad? If they feel bad, that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, is there a way that I can make it to where it's like, hey, thank you for being here for me. Because of you, I'm able to do this. Because of you, I have this thing. And at the same time, talking to other authors and saying, hey, you're where you are is not the end of the world. Right now, you've gone 2 weeks and you haven't sold a book, or you've gone 2 months and you haven't sold one yet, especially when you're starting out. It can be really tough, but that feeling is on them. But it's so natural that a lot of times I won't post something if I've had a really great day or something, because I know that you're inviting the sniping to come down because somebody feels bad and they just want to bark at you. And if they're having a bad day, yes, sometimes that'll happen. Most of them are great to me. But yeah, so I have a tendency to tone it down. If something really awesome has happened to me, I started just like not saying anything, just let it roll, because it's because we want people like us, and it's really hard when we're in that space. Maybe not Johnny, you're different. Oh, you like
well, if you pay attention to like the indie fantasy spaces, one thing they like to do is a transparency post. I'm not really sure why, where they like to put up their sales for the month and how much they sold and made. And I've never really cared for that myself.
It's called the humble brag. That's what it's called. That's the humble brag.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm on both sides of not wanting to do it. One, because if I had a bad month, I have dedicated haters that I don't want to find that out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I have a really good month, I don't want to feel like I'm rubbing anything in anyone's face. That's why occasionally when big milestones happen, I will make note of it. Like I just passed 20,000 reads on Kindle Unlimited.
Hell yeah, dude.
But I'm always very humble about that because I'm appreciative of anybody that even bothers to give me a chance. So, that's kind of where I go into it. I don't do the monthly transparency post because, look, we're indie authors. Sometimes it's feast or famine, and it's a hard road to go. And we're starting to see some people kind of start to tap out because they realize like this is a long haul game. This is, and for some of them, the cost and the effort isn't quite worth it. Me and Norwich Snow just saw this week a fellow indie author named John Palladino. He put up I didn't hear what you said.
He's a fantastic author.
Yeah, he is a great author, and he has had great momentum, great sales. He's put out really good books that I don't want to dig for it because I don't know where his book is. But great covers, great interesting stories if you like really dark, grimdark fantasy. But he tapped out. He said that, he admitted that he once he's done finished writing his 4-book series, he's not going to do it. That to him, it's not worth the cost or the effort anymore. And so... Yeah.
And we're going to see a lot more of this because like all the people who entered these spaces during COVID, how so many people started a podcast, it literally became a meme. Like, hi is my name and this is my podcast. Like everyone had a podcast. Everyone was doing all this content creation stuff. We're starting to see a lot of people start to tap out of it. Now that reality's kind of starting to set in. It's like, oh, I can still struggle to go here, or I can just go back to being construction work and start making good money again.
Well,
I don't blame the people who tap out. It's reality.
And it's something that I kind of wanted to tell John, because once you've written something, you're an author. That part doesn't change. You don't stop being an author because you didn't write another book. When we look at some of the great, To Kill Mockingbird, I think it was that or The Yearling, the only one. Maybe there's like 2 other books. They're still an author. They don't have to write every day to be you don't have to sell a book every day to be an author. Once you have written this book, you are an author. Now, whether or not you're experiencing success on your own level that you need it to be, I think that's the real litmus test. And we're saying you've been successful. I think John's been successful.
The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, that's it.
I have a lot of people that hate that book. I never read it.
Other books, but so we have authors that their standards higher because he wants to make a certain level of money, and he wants to get a certain number of sales, and he has an internal goal that he has. Finish
your thing. I'll
make that money. You're trying to say, okay, I've got to make this much, or I need to find something else. That is the pressure that's on people, and they say, all right, I want to do that. Well, John is still going to be an author. He's always going to be an author. He's written these books. He is the author at this point. It doesn't change. But he may pursue other goals to get his get the financial dreams that he has in order. And I think that once we sort of segment it and say, yeah, I'm looking for money elsewhere, but I have given birth to these beautiful books, this content, it will always be mine. And I think that we need to sort of be able to take our mind in that direction.
Agreed. So Movie Theater has a great question here that I wanted to highlight. What is the difference between a mature writer and immature writing? What is the difference between professional experience and an amateur? Before you guys answer, I just want to say, the writer who places an F-bomb in every other sentence, Aishinkar! Edelman cry! Sorry, I had something in my throat. What do you guys think?
Difference between mature writer and immature writing. That's an interesting question. It almost seems like two different things, because mature writing, I think, would not be shying away from, mature content. Mm-hmm. But immature writing would be glamorizing it, because you put in content that's for a mature audience, but it can easily cross over into glamorization or exploitation, because there's ways to write mature material without being explicit about it.
Like an example of writing for exploitation and shock value could be Andor season 2.
Yeah, and I think writing stuff explicitly, if you're writing something explicitly that's much more mature, is there a reason why you're writing it that that much explicit? And don't conflate sex and violence. To me, they are very much on two different planes. Just because they're both considered mature content doesn't mean that they're interchangeable.
One example I would give of a book that has mature content that is written very immaturely, and I'm about to invoke a book you guys are going to groan. 50 Shades of Grey. That is a book that has very mature content that is written very immaturely.
Well, it's a fanfic.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And that kind of rolls into the second question. What is the difference between professional experience and amateur? I don't care for the word amateur. I prefer the word fledgling, because everybody does start somewhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no threshold point where you go from, I'm experienced now, there's not a test that you take to pass from one to the other. Yeah.
Oh,
and in a lot of ways, if you're always growing in your craft, then you're always going to be a fledgling writer. At some point, you just look back. It's like, when do I become a man? What's the exact point?
One does that. Right? There's no magical lie. You're a man. You'll know when you're a man.
Well, wait a minute. Yeah. Isn't it right after the bar mitzvah? No.
I mean, if you've had a portion of your skin cut off at birth, then yes.
L'chaim. Yeah. Yeah.
I would say, honestly, it has to do with that internal mechanism of why are they writing the book.
Yeah.
And there's a maturity in sharing. So it's the same way as it is in conversation. Why are you saying this thing in the conversation? An immature conversationalist will actually just talk about what's inside their head. It doesn't flow back and forth. It's just they're talking about it because they want to hear their own voice. They'll say things that might not appeal to a reader. There's things that may be appealing on one side, but then they're talking about all of their internal thoughts. They're writing about. We talked about this before. The writer writing to their own fetish. When they're writing to that all the time, you can tell it's like, they're writing their own scene from a pornographic novel. That's a more immature version of writing. If you're having a conversation with your reader where you're sharing an adventure or a journey and you're inviting this reader along, there's just a different mindset that goes with it. And I think that is what is the line between a mature writer and an immature writer, the same way it is with a person who's talking to a group. One is doing it because they just want to hear their own voice and have their own thoughts project. And the other one is actually wanting to share an interesting thought and wants to do it in such a way that the rest of the audience enjoys the ride as well.
Yeah, very well said. This is why I brought her on, everybody. She knows the stuff.
I'm dying over here, by the way. It is so hot right now. It is so muggy in this house. I'm like literally sitting right in front of the air conditioner. Can y'all hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you can hear my air.
We're getting
conditioner.
pretty warm over here too. Right next
You might
door
be
in
hearing
Louisiana.
mine. I got like the fan. Literally, the fan's right here, blowing in
Oh,
my
yeah,
face.
dude, it's so hot. It's like, so I got my little fan out here. This is real. It's mine. So I was like,
Looking all purty.
thank you so much. But if you talk about immature writing versus mature writing, I will say this. Watcher of the Damned, Transmutation Texas was my first offering. I never wrote anything before that. And I'm sure that it would have probably been rejected by a publisher if they'd had it because it doesn't fit genre. It doesn't do other things. Don't ever think that your writing is immature simply because you've never written something before. I've had my best. I'm really blessed that that's the lead off for my series, and people seem to like the series, and it leads into everything. And it's gotten I don't have a whole lot of reviews. I've got 30 if there's something on it, but they're good reviews. They're actually great reviews. Don't think that you're an immature writer just because you've never written a novel before. That is an internal state. It's not based on how many novels you've written. Because, and I'm saying this, okay, I'm going to say something I've never said before. So I have to do private investigations, and we see just so much porn. We see so much porn. Okay, let me just say this right now. So it's not, and I try not to look at that stuff because it's not really good for your soul overall.
I mean, also the fact that you've literally seen it all. So
there's porn. There's a difference between erotica and porn, for instance. One is made to explore the beauty of the male and female interaction. The other one is, hey, I want to really look at this because it gets me my jollies. There's a difference, and they can sort of waver back and forth, that there's a difference between it. Well, the same thing when we've talked about certain romantasy books and other things like that. They're written for a different perspective, and it's just I've seen pornographic works that have gained multiple just people bought all kinds of copies of it back in the days. These
50 Shades again.
They had pornographic novels, women's romance, a lot of it very sometimes pornographic, and there'll be people that have written hundreds of novels. It's like pulp, and so the maturity of the writer isn't dependent on how many novels you publish. You could be a hack and still have published 100 of them, or you can be a wonderful author and be a mature author and maybe only have written 1 or 2 novels. It is an internal state of how you're trying to share the story.
Or it can be like Stephen King and hasn't written a good novel in 25 years.
Oh, getting that algorithm going, aren't you?
And, I know he's not everyone's favorite. Lord knows I've got my issues with the man. I do think Stephen King did have maybe the best analogy for when you become a writer. I believe he said, when you can buy a cup of coffee with the earnings you've gotten with something you've written, you're officially an author. And I think that
so by that logic, I'm officially a professional comic book creator.
But you are. I mean, I don't care. Honestly, these days the distinction between the professionals and the indie comic creators is really blurred, and frankly, the professionals are much more unprofessional than a lot of the indies are, in my experience.
Yeah, I've seen that. Like it's kind of like what I was said about like a lot of the like the trad pub people. They're kind of like the people on like that meme of like the people on the banister looking down at everyone else kind of thing. Oh, John, I just realized the shirt you're wearing. It's pretty cool, actually.
Oh, thank you. My wife left me Texas Roadhouse rolls in here for some reason.
Oh my god!
And the butter's in it.
Oh, that is a good find.
I gotta eat that with the ham that I just got done cooking before I come on stream. So once we're done here,
I'm gonna have to get a bigger shirt if you keep eating that. Them rolls are good.
Hey, John's wife learned a long time ago, if you don't pay no toll, then we don't eat no rolls. Extra points.
I understood that reference. Yeah, I saw that movie in theaters back in the day.
My family had it on VHS, and I watched it all the time. Like, I was way too young to watch. I was watching that movie like 7-8 years old. I was way too young to watch that movie.
A lot of references that went over my head, though. I ended up finding that out when I would watch Mystery Science Theater 3000 in the 90s. Like, they would make references to stuff I had no idea what they were talking about. And then like 30 years down the line, I'll hear a name or I'll see something and I'll go, oh, I got that joke 30 years too late.
Finally.
Yeah, That's a problem with watching certain movies. Like for example, Casper, a beautiful movie, but they make a lot of referential humor with that, and I'm like, I don't understand half of this stuff. And I don't think any 7 or 8-year-old watching this movie at the time got it.
Oh yeah, well, I forgot about that movie.
Wow.
That movie was something else. That was a big like a big movie back in the day.
Yeah,
That was a big hit.
Yeah, it was actually at the time it was big for CG because it was the first one to have major CG characters throughout the entire movie.
Oh yeah. The youngins don't know, but back in the day, they used to have news reports and whatnot on the advancements of CGI in movies.
Yes.
They would dedicate entire segments of mainstream magazine news shows like 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or in the evening news to just cover the guy getting his head blown off in Men in Black and it grows back.
Oh, there would be
I've never
entire
seen
TV
that
shows called Movie Magic, Movie Magic, and that show would be so successful they'd have a kids spinoff of the.
And now it's so mundane, nobody even cares. Most people are just going, man, it doesn't look as good as it did 20 years ago.
So here's y'all do not know what it was like to when and I'm saying this, so here comes age rolling right up on you. Yeah, come on, get ready. So when Star Wars came out, the original Star Wars at the original time, and of course I'm a teenager at that point. I'm a teenager when it comes out. So I'm watching this thing. There was so much hype over the technology used to create Star Wars. It was absolutely insane. Especially when it first started taking off. And so when it first hits the theaters, it's sort of out there. It's okay. I actually ended up waiting 8 months to see it when it came out because my dad wanted to make sure that it was really cool.
This was back when a movie would come out. It would be in theaters all year round.
It was in there for 8 months, and I'm like, dude, I got to go see this, Dad. Please take me, please. And so he took me. It turned out to be an incredible moment for me. I actually wrote about it later, about one of my favorite memories of my father. Just standing up, just hollering and cheering when they finally hit the missile down into the Death Star. He was like, woohoo, because it reminded him of being aboard a battleship. And when he was a World War II vet. But so there was so much hype about just those advancements, how big it was, the effects and how they were made. And actually it was historic in that sense. We start down the road to those effects. And I still prefer the original, actually, first of all, because Han shot first. We all know it. And because just seeing those effects as they were at the time reminds me of how far we've come. And the fact that they still stand is amazing.
And I would argue, the original cut still holds up.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of Star Wars, this is something I never knew for a long time. I didn't find out 2 years later. And it's something I actually think is a flaw in the original film. Because I know a lot of people want to hold it up as a perfect film. But I'm talking about his friend Biggs. Wasn't that his name? The one that...
Big Starlighter.
Right. Biggs. This guy, from the audience's perspective, that maybe this is just the storyteller part of me, right? They cut a scene where Biggs comes up to him when he's still on the moisture farm and says, look, I'm going to join the rebellion. You want to come with me? Oh, no, and he's like, no, I can't. And I didn't even know this scene existed until I started seeing it in books and picture books. And there's footage of it. And I'm like, why didn't they cut this out? I'm guessing
I think a large part of it is it had oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I figured they had to cut it for pacing's sake. Because if you think about the beginning part of the movie, where would you really realistically put that scene in and it doesn't break the flow of the story really badly?
I think that's the issue, because when I'm reading it, and I read some of the first novelizations that came out right afterwards. There were 3
I read those.
Yeah, between you read, and where Leia ends up with Luke. It's weirdly insane because it's before.
I forgot about that.
Yes, really before all that, and so you have these references to some of the cut scenes that were in there, and so this is before the Empire Strikes Back. We had an entire different alternate storyline that goes away, and Biggs is.
I have Splinter of the Mind's Eye.
Yes, thank you. And all of these stories, like I said, are sort of lost. They become part of a different canon completely. But Biggs, I think it's just the fact that they were looking at the flow of the movie and they were saying, okay, if you do this, maybe it foreshadows too much. I think they were concerned about that also.
I can tell you exactly why they cut it. I can tell you exactly why. Because the original version of the intro was Luke was actually supposed to come in a lot earlier. Like
he was looking up at the sky.
Yeah, and basically that whole Tashi Station stuff is actually part of that, because like there's that scene where it's like, hey guys, look up in the sky and see that, and like the girl, like Biggs' girlfriend, who's completely cut from the. How would that feel to have like a bit part in Star Wars and like nobody believes you because your part got cut?
The reason why I think it got cut was because, you know, not long before American Graffiti came out, and there's some very, very similar scenes and shots and stuff. And I think that when his wife or whomever did the you know, the kind of that blessing of the script or whatever, or whoever the director, you know, the editor was, said, look, you're basically pigeonholing yourself into this, like, you're making Luke basically like all your other characters from your previous film. Mm-hmm. You know, that whole thing, because it was basically the greasers and the, you know, the punk kids at the malt shop with their bikes or their cars.
I never saw that movie. And the reason I bring it up is because from the audience perspective, at the end of the movie, Biggs comes in and it's like, who's this asshole? And then he dies.
As he was cut in the original, that was a special edition add-on. That wasn't in the original cut.
Yes.
You remember, he dies, and then this Luke's reaction is just this stunned silence. It's like, who was that asshole that he cares in the original
cut? Well, that's the 1996 re-release. They added that scene in.
Well, in the original cut, the reason why Luke had such a negative reaction to Biggs being taken out was because Luke's ship was the only ship left.
Yes.
That's why he was like, shit, it's up to me, and I'm going to die. And it was the loss of innocence.
Wedge was alive, but his ship was out of the fight.
Yeah. Everybody was. He was the only one in the trench. Everybody else was gone, or like you said, off, whatever. And that was the moment where Luke stopped. You know, you want to talk about becoming a man? That was his moment where he stopped being a child.
I say this.
Like, it's all on me.
I take that.
I was watching with a 14-year-old, and it did. That was exactly what I thought. He's now the only one. So
like,
Biggs just sort of. Yeah, that's
he ended up not, though, because like Wedge Antilles was part of the surviving crew, and who was the other guy? Tycho, I think his name was. He was an expanded universe character.
Yeah, because if you look at that shot where they're going away, I think there's at least 2 or 3 X-wings and the Millennium Falcon. Which I'm sorry, I gotta say that moment when like Han Solo comes in, like what? It's like you're a kid, not bullshit and go. It's like it is like one of my favorite, like, because like he's gone, like he's just gonna take the money and run. No, he actually cares. You know, it's like that is just one of the
it really does build up to that moment very well. That moment was actually a very big inspiration for Mrs. Snow would know this. She read my book when a big Mora moment in my book. That was But then when you think about like, I want to have this in my book, and then you got to like, well, I got to reverse engineer all these steps back to the beginning to justify getting that. That's
gosh,
that's something you'll see a lot of
talking about.
Yeah, that's something that is really tricky to pull off. It's something I'm not that bad at, but you'll see some authors. You'll see this in movies. Sometimes comics, where someone came up with a great idea for a set piece, right? An action scene, line, and they got to contort the rest of the story around to justify that point. It's
Game of Thrones really fell victim to that, especially later seasons.
Who?
Game of Thrones, like the Game of Thrones writers, they really fell victim to. Like if you look at season 7 and 8, it's basically a series of like
high spots,
really well shot action sequences. And the shitty justification that leads up to it.
Yeah, poorly strung together.
And I would say that like that's a lot of modern writing is, and then the dragon's gonna come in and burn everything, man. It's gonna be the greatest. Okay, then how do we get up to that scene? How do we just like
you had characters that were running on warp speed in order to justify getting the fact that you didn't have any long form communication. To justify these things. Yeah, that was some pretty egregious stuff.
That's actually a problem of like the Martin novels, even in like the early stuff where characters are just teleporting all over the place.
Well, you remember in the final scene where the Daenerys there gets over the wall to save Jon Snow, and it's like Yeah, that's like a week's worth of flight. Like,
It's a week's worth. It's a couple weeks for him to go back, travel to Dragonstone, let her know, and a week for her, maybe or so for her to fly out there.
Yeah.
And they're there stuck for a few hours.
Like let's say it takes, I think it took them like maybe 3 days to get there. So if he's running, let's say it takes him a day and a half to get there. Let's just and so he gets to the castle. They send a raven there. That raven's probably going to take the raven is probably going to take
a raven with a hyperdrive.
Let's say a week. Let's say
two nacelles on the side.
Let's say a raven takes a week to get to Dragonstone. Okay, and so
she hops
on her dragon. Which you can make the argument a dragon is faster than a raven. Okay, then. And most take her like 3 to 4 days to get to get to the wall at least, and then another day to get to them.
When the logical inconsistencies start falling flat, it's like, why is there just a puff of fire and some feathers? It's like because the warp speed didn't get canceled out by physics.
Thanks, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say.
Actually, in order to travel this fast, Dane would have to shut up, nerd.
Yeah. See, and that's another thing. And this is not necessarily a problem with writers. It's more of a problem with like the audience, and the authors have to adjust accordingly. Is the obsession with realism? Like you saw this like with the Superman trailer when he like hyper sped up to oh my god, this woman would be lit. Like, did you see the boy? She'd be like a splatter of goo.
Did you see the post that I had that blew up very recently? It was a little bit of a commentary on that. I can put it in the private chat, but like their rule of cool does cover a lot, but it doesn't cover everything. But I've talked about this picture before, and I understand the reason why it is, but people 135,000 views. Yeah.
Oh, you be even dining good on those Elon bucks, brother.
Oh, it's even better now because now he's done booted off all the scam Indian accounts. Like my payouts have been way better. I wish he had booted them before I had that 29 million viewed post that I had a couple months ago. Because I got
$100. The one that I got like 6 million, I got like $100 off of that, and I barely get paid anymore. I actually barely get paid.
You want to know the discrepancy of the engagement account? I'm sorry, Miss Snow. Let me finish this real quick. Yeah. Listen. You want to know the discrepancy? You actually made more with your post than I did from the post that had 29 million views on it a few months ago.
Bullshit. Sorry.
Yep.
All right. Let's.
And I didn't even get a community note.
Damn.
Yeah, those people were so like it was. Yeah, but I don't want to talk about my stuff. Let's talk about this one. Okay. I don't understand what the litmus test here. Can you please explain it to me?
Okay, the litmus test is why is Superman stopping the train instead of saving the boy?
Yeah, destroying property, possibly killing people in the train.
The point is that the point is that it communicates a lot about Superman. The point is not to save someone in a rescue position as realistically as possible. That is not the point of Superman. Mm-hmm. Somebody actually summed it up a lot better than I could. If I can find the screenshot that I took of it. No, can't show that. I'll credit Shinyan
More
Dragon.
like a litmus. Oh, Pixel, you cheeky bastard.
It says it's great.
Slave guy. God, I'm sorry. I love Pixel Trader. He's such a cool dude.
Yeah, he's a good dude. This person, Shinyan Dragon, posted, it's great artistically, showcasing the superhuman nature of Superman, his belief in saving the innocent in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Great visual storytelling. They put a but at the end of it and did a bunch of the detractor stuff, but I think I think I took that part out because what they said first was even better. The other follow-up tweet that really kind of got under people's craw was underneath it by Zuka Zerfantes. Said people get hung up on details. Millennials and Zoomers in particular have a really irritating habit of nitpickery. Much of their humor is based off of it. The image meant to represent Superman's core prerogative in all things: protect the innocent regardless of the challenge. And if you look at that and you don't start picking it apart for why Superman didn't do this, that's the litmus test. You understand this is cool, this is awesome, and this is why we make things. This is what we make things for.
And also the problem is some people might try and bring in context. Like I've seen a lot of people are mentioning the Spider-Man 2 scene. Well, in the Spider-Man 2 scene, he had no choice. He couldn't save all those people. Literally, the best way to do it was to stop the train.
And that was an even better example too.
Yeah.
Because that used everything at his disposal. It showcased everything about him as a hero, as a superhero, and as a person.
Yeah, and another thing I like is like his mask was gone. He's like, fine, and he even turned back and said, "Hang on." I love the scene afterwards where like he's just a kid, you know. Like I'm sorry, I love the Raimi films.
They are pretty good. I even went back and looked at tried Spider-Man 3 again, and me and my son were like really enjoyed it. He actually thought when that came out, you know, a lot of us really cringed at the Bully Maguire stuff, right? It was kind of cringy because the animated series did the whole Dark Peter Parker arc a lot better. But in going back and looking at it, like the humor value in it was way better. And I still think it's got too many villains in it, but even so.
It should have been honestly. Well, the other problem with Spider-Man 3 is literally Venom, because Sam Raimi did not want Venom in there. It was forced upon him. The original plan was Sandman and the Vulture, and they had cast Ben Kingsley as the Vulture. So just think about this.
Oh, that would have been
the Vulture done by Sam Raimi, starring Ben Kingsley. That is gold.
Okay, to that point, let me switch gears here real quick. Ben Kingsley is the Vulture. Okay, that brings mind to something else. Remember those rumors we hear every now and then about other actors being cast in really big movies back in the day?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Like, best example I can think of, initially, remember Will Smith passed on The Matrix, and it was originally supposed to be Will Smith and Sean Connery. Now, we've been in remake mode for several years now. What if we went back with some of these movies that had different castings and said, let's go back and reboot the movie, but do it with the original casting they wanted to. Let's see what the Will Smith Matrix
I do maintain
looks like.
That 90s Will Smith could have done Neo. Like, this is like Men in Black, Independence Day. Like, this is like Will Smith at the height of his coolness. I think he could have done the Matrix. I think he could have too. He would have added that whole "oh hell no" attitude, but I think it would have worked. He knew how to make that kind of thing work. Yeah. Also, like one of the other castings was in Batman '89 and like a lot of the Batman movies. Damian Wayans was supposed to be Robin. In fact, so much so that he actually still receives checks from the movie because he was actually supposed to be it. He had a pay-or-play contract.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
Like some other ones, like Sean Young was supposed to be Vicky Vale, but then she got into a horse accident, and then that's when they brought in Michelle Pfeiffer. And I mean, Sharon. What? I forgot who it was. But you know who I'm talking about. But like, so yeah, Sean Young almost was Vicky, and I think Sean Young probably would have done a good job in that movie. But yeah, I hate to say it, like the Vicky Vale character was like in the long term such a nothing burger. I mean, she didn't even appear in the animated series. Like, I don't know. I guess I think DC doesn't know how to use her because she's basically just Gotham's Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Except maybe a little bit sexier.
That who? Yeah.
That's essentially what she is. He's Gotham's Lois Lane. Nah, whatever. Like she showed up in. I know. Not that invested in it. No. I would have been interested in seeing Robin very well, mind you. She was amazing. I would have been interested in seeing a third Tim Burton Batman movie. I know they did a graphic novel version of the original script, but I mean, what else is Tim Burton doing these days? What else is Michael Keaton doing these days? Well, we're not even getting a new Batman movie recently. Why not? I mean, I'm going to tell you exactly what I want. That Flash movie don't count either. I want a Batman Beyond movie set in the Burtonverse, okay, with Michael Keaton as old Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, old Michael.
Yeah, everybody's wish for it.
But also, I want Commissioner Barbara Pennyworth, played by Alicia Silverstone. She's a good actress. I think she deserves it.
You're losing me a little bit there.
I think she was a decent Batgirl. The script kind of let her down a little bit.
What do you think, Mrs. Snow?
Honestly, I think that if you actually could rework those, now here's what the controversial thought: with everything that's being done with AI and CGI now, you could literally put those characters in almost in an animated series. You wouldn't even have to bring back the actors except as voice actors. If you wanted to do that, you probably do it a lot faster, and you
kind of like what they did. Have you seen Batman: Return of the Caped Crusader, where they brought back Adam West, Burt Ward, and the Julie Newmar to voice their roles? So like bring back Michael Keaton and a bunch of like bring in Billy D. Williams to do Two-Face. Honestly,
Yep. That I always wanted to see. I always thought they did Billy D. Williams dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did a lot of people dirty. Like, did you ever hear the story for Batman Unchained, which is supposed to be like the Batman film supposed to come out in 2000s? They're going to do like a trial and bring back all the villains, like including Dick Nicholson as a Joker. It's kind of like that one episode of BTAS, if you remember, where they put Batman on trial.
I remember that one. And then the lawyer successfully defended him, turned it around. Like,
give that guy a raise.
You're right, but he's guilty anyway because we're in charge of the trial. Wait, that's how that episode went down, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think so. I actually remember hearing this rumor a while back, like in the original version of Dark Knight Rises, the Joker was actually supposed to be, I think, where Scarecrow was, and they're actually going to bring in Kristen Bell to play Harley Quinn.
Ooh.
So think Veronica Mars era Kristen Bell as Harley Quinn in a Nolan movie. I think that would work.
I'm struggling to remember what Christian Bell's acting was like. I did not watch Veronica Mars, so I don't have a frame of reference for her.
She was in Assassin's Creed.
Which one?
Oh, you would know, wouldn't you?
Yeah, one and two. She gets.
She also voiced Anna in Frozen. That's kind of like her big claim to fame nowadays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like she's the you want to build a snowman. So Movie Theater King says, do you think a writer's worst foe is failure to change and evolve? I don't mean sticking to a formula that sells to your paying audiences, but making it so easy for anyone to guess without reading it. Yes and no, I would say. Because it's kind of a balancing act where it's like you need to listen to your fans, but at the same time, sometimes you need to not listen to your fans. But really the beauty comes from like knowing when to do which. What do you think, John?
No, I think you nailed it right there, because when you have when a writer finds the formula that works for them and they go with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good. Now, the problem is a lot of writers are creative. They're like any other creative, and they eventually get that kind of itch, like, well, what if I did this? And what if I did that? What if I zigged when I should have zagged? And they can end up getting the itch to want to try and do something different, but that's too different that's so different that their audience doesn't care for it. And I will give the best example I know of, which is the schizophrenic nature of the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. Terry Goodkind had that, and where he, on top of a lot of other issues, because believe me, I could go on about that guy. Rest in peace.
Oh, I didn't realize he passed away.
He passed away a while ago. He went about 4 or 5 novels in, and then he started getting this, what if I did this? There's one of his books where he wrote the entire thing from the point of view of 3 different side characters we'd never met before that were tertiary characters. And he was kind of like going like, what if we looked at the side characters and how they're affected by all these things going on? And it ended up becoming a nothing burger of a novel. It didn't really advance the Sword of Truth series at all. And then, it just, you end up changing stuff so radically that a lot of people are changing the status quo to such an extent that your fans don't like it.
Yeah.
And they either leave, and then you either fulfill your vision or you panic and try to reset the status quo. And that ends up looking like cheap writing.
Kind of reminds me of Robert Jordan, who his solution to everything was just more characters, more characters, more characters. You get a multiple, and like he kept adding more and more characters to the point where like the characters people actually cared about, that he basically stuck Perrin in the woods for like 3 or 4 books and did jack fucking shit. Like meanwhile, Rand's having all these adventures. Like he put pauses on character. Like Perrin is literally one of the 3 most important characters of the book series. Like I love Robert Jordan. I love Wheel Time. I'm one of the few people that actually read the entire series. But god dang, like I'm afraid to do a reread because like I'm afraid I'll get to the slog and I'll tap out and I'll feel bad about it.
I would say,
Yeah.
and when you have a writer, then everybody sees this happen. So first of all, we know that if you stick at it long enough and you're actually out there and you're writing all the time and you're writing book after book after book, you're going to have something that doesn't stick. You're going to try something and it's not going to work. It's not the end of the world if it happens. Good series will still survive that. An example of it probably would be Stephen King, where people will read one book and they're like, oh, I hate this ending. But the other ones he does well, they know what they like about what he writes, and they will go back for what they like. They will go back for the positive parts. So you have to still keep on putting out. You just move on. You don't try to reset it. Don't try to erase it. Don't take it out of the universe if you don't have to. Just pick back up and keep moving. But that being said, I think once we start establishing ourselves as authors and we say, okay, this is my voice, this is how I speak, and these people love it. If I change that up, I need to be saying, hey, this is something completely different. It's something that that you may not like as much, but this is a story I've written out of my own, personal experience, or it's almost like a nonfiction, or it's about something I remember and I just want to do this. I hope you enjoy it, but it's different. You have to be honest with it, because I believe it's Michael Crichton who wrote A Painted House, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I've got to remember. It was one of our crime thriller people that always did these, fast-paced, novels and everything else. And then here's this basically novel about his mom. It's actually a fantastic book. It's because the voice was still the author's voice. We heard that same voice, and so the continuity is there. Make sure that if you have an author's voice, that is probably the most important thing that you can have in each of your books. Your fans will follow that because they enjoy you telling the story. If you change up the author's voice too much, I think that's when you lose your audience, because they're coming back to hear you tell the story.
And I think that's kind of something that happened with Star Wars, because like, love or hate it, pre-Disney, Star Wars always had that Lucas touch. Even like the expanded universe, like all the stuff that had happened in the expanded universe, George had to sign off on. Like in Vector Prime, when they killed off Chewie, George Lucas had to sign off on that. Obviously he's not overseeing every novel, but like everything Star Wars still had that Lucas touch to it. Like it still had that voice of George Lucas in it. Now it's like Andor has the Gilroy voice. Ahsoka has the Filoni voice. Like it's so many desperate parts, all begging to be taken seriously. And it's like that's why it's like with Star Wars, it's like he liked Star Wars and he didn't. Now it's like, oh, I like this part of Star Wars. Now I don't like this part of Star Wars. This segmentization is not good for the brand.
Yeah.
I want to read some comments here. Quirrell does a good point here. Predictable is fine if the journey is fun. Subverting expectations can lead to The Last Jedi, and the execution of like that's kind of something we've seen in modern writing, where it's like, I want to subvert expectations. I want to be unpredictable. And you do the most trite things ever. Like I remember I was watching Cobra Kai, one of the later seasons. Like they have like this trick that they pulled a lot of times. It's like, oh, this person is saying bad, like you think they're saying bad things. They have this fight. Lo and behold, it was just mundane shit. And so Daniel was going to the furniture place to confront Mike Barnes. He was on the phone and like, oh, he's just talking about normal stuff. Like I literally predicted exactly what they were going to do, because like they pulled that same subverting expectations so many times, it become predictable, And it was a groan-worthy moment.
Where we see the subverting expectations the most are in long-running franchises that have sometimes tens, thousands, or hundreds of episodes. When you get to that place where you actually have so many episodes that or so many books that you have to subvert in order to keep the story fresh, maybe it's time to end that arc. When you've gone so far that it's no longer fresh, that the story no longer advances, you can't keep on telling it without doing something wrong. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, this is the truth. TV series have changed the way that we look at writing. We want our novels to have the potential to be continued on forever if some TV show picks it up or some movie franchise, much like the Marvel Universe. Don't do that. If you're writing a story, write a story. Watch the Damned has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It had it from the very beginning. I told John I saw the first chapter. I wrote it, literally sat down and wrote, and I could see the end of the story. I have to get to that end of the story. Otherwise, it's not Watcher of the Tam. It won't be that story. When you're writing an open-ended, continuous set of characters that have to keep it fresh every week, you are going to fail at some point because there's only so far those things can go. Now, you can explore side paths of it. You can take a different area. You can take a spin-off, or you can go somewhere else. But when you get to the point where you have to subvert expectations in order to keep telling your story longer and longer, it's probably time to go ahead and let that series have a good and satisfying end. It's even better before that point.
And in my opinion, I think this is why Star Wars has kind of had its staying power, is Star Wars has a timeline that goes back like 30, 100,000 years. And like, if you don't want the original trilogy, go back 10,000 years and play Star Wars Knights of the Republic. If you don't like that, go even further. There's like so many different, like, I think it was Timothy Zahn, like his advice for Star Wars writers was pick an era that hasn't been done, flush it out, and own it. Like, that was his advice. And Star Wars is the kind of franchise to where you can do that. Like, they did a Star Wars 100 years after with, like, Cade Skywalker, you know, kind of thing, like the great-grandson of Luke or something. I can't remember.
See, now that makes sense in your head, but it seems like every time they try and do something like that, people have really lost interest. They had that novel and graphic novel series they released a few years ago, the High Republic era.
Oh, that was Kathleen. That was a Kathleen Kennedy initiative. That's why it failed.
That's been a sales disaster. The Acolyte was a disaster. It was, on top of not being very interesting. It had a lot of other problems, but like no one was really interested in that setting except for like the hardcore Star Wars shills.
But I'm arguing like the old EU, because that was success for like 10, 15 years. Well, that had a really good run.
My thing is,
go ahead.
Well, my thing is, it isn't that people aren't interested in those particular epochs. It's that the content of those epochs, like the space lesbians, all that, like nobody wants that crap. Like if it was a good story in like you didn't even need to put Star Wars on it. You know what I mean? Like if it was just a new sci-fi show,
the Darth Bane trilogy.
It's like dudes with laser swords kicking the crap out of each other. People have been like, I'm in,
but we've also kind of reached a point where people have really lost faith in the people who are running Star Wars ability to produce stories that are actually good. I guess true. The Andor is and the exception, but when you look at the cost of that series, and now it's over, I think completely, because then they reached the end where there's nowhere to go for them. But
they decided to end it. Like if they wanted to keep it going, they would have engineered it for the timeline wise. That's really all it is.
There you have. I think this is in this comment right here that's coming up. Let's talk about Genndy Tartakovsky and his storytelling and how he produced. This is an epoch, and it's actually, to me, is probably one of the better versions of Star Wars. Something I would actually like to watch the whole thing. I never got a chance to watch all of it. But I'll do anything Genndy Tartakovsky does, because he is a storyteller, and he told us the way it was interesting. The characters made sense. The characterizations were compelling, even more so, I thought, than the prequels, because the characters meant something. There was a depth to them and a richness that worked. And it has a particular arc as well. Genndy usually is famously very good at taking an arc and finishing it. And so he did such an extraordinary job with that. So it's not about people necessarily having given up on Star Wars. Star Wars gave up on their fans. They literally walked away from things that worked. They subverted heroes that were meant to be the way they were. They subverted the original ideologies, including the Force just becoming another genetic, a trope. And you end up with something that is so far from its original premise that it loses its appeal. Genndy Tartakovsky managed to bring some of that back through his storytelling and his animation. And I
And
think that
I
it goes
sorry.
back to writing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be pissing off a lot of people here in a second. What I'm about to say. That's why I could never get into the Clone Wars, the CG. Like the Gendy stuff looks visually amazing, and I could go back to any time. But the Clone Wars was always looked like CG slop to me. It just looked like generic CG slop, and now everybody hates me because I dare say bad. Like, oh, look at the Clone Wars. Hey, look, they're doing their I don't care. I never got into Clone Wars. Ahsoka is kind of a cool character, I guess. You know, I've seen.
You're not alone. Like I remember when it
animation
first
is
came
terrible.
out.
The models are terrible. Like,
what was it like? The first arc of the show was a movie in TV, and it
I've
looked
seen
really
it, but
bad. By the time I heard that the show was actually good, like I was just at a point where I really didn't care anymore. So
like I never watched it.
I was that was like maybe in the late 2000s. That was about the time I was burnt out with the EU, which I didn't finish. And I don't plan on going back to finish. I did read how it ended, but
I've read a lot of the EU novels. I love the Star Wars games. Like Force Unleashed is like one of my favorite games ever. John, I do implore you, if you do explore some EU novels, the Darth Bane trilogy is freaking amazing.
So now it's my turn to piss people off. I was always invested in the forward timeline of the EU. I was never big about the KOTOR era Star Wars, right? I was never big about, I never really cared. I know it's probably good, but, you know, at the time that it was all coming out and, you know, KOTOR was the biggest game in the world. I still need to play that, by the way. That shocks a lot of other people because I've never played. Well, I played 10 minutes of KOTOR. I didn't get the D20 system it had going on, so I didn't finish it. Sorry. Yeah, I never really cared for that whole, you know, Knights of the Old Republic or the Old Republic era. That was just, when it came to Star Wars, I wanted to know where Luke and everyone else was going off into the future. I was highly invested in the Yuuzhan Vong era because about the time that happened, it really did feel like the EU was knocking on stagnation because it was like, how many more times can the New Republic be fighting like Sith remnants and remnants?
And then
of
they literally
Empire?
brought in Cthulhu, like Abeloth, you know, that kind of stuff.
That was later, I think.
Right.
I don't think I reached that particular set of novels. I didn't make it to the end of the Yuuzhan Vong War. That's what it was. I will say though, Star by Star was one of the most unbelievable, was probably the best Star Wars novel I ever read because it had the guts to basically be the Star Wars version of the Red Wedding. And that was hard for me because a lot of the characters that were often that were ones I had read in the Young Jedi Academy novels, and I was like, oh no, why would you do this to me?
Did you read the Jedi Academy trilogy, like the stuff with Kip Duran? That was pretty good.
The Kevin J. Yeah, look, the EU was a mixed bag. Okay.
Yes, very much so.
There were like the Black Fleet Crisis that was very forgettable. The Barbara Hamlin novels,
Lost Tribe of the Sith.
I didn't read that one. When I say the EU, I mean nothing that went like backwards in time.
Oh, okay. Because I'm the opposite. Because I prefer the backwards stuff. Like the Darth Bane is like the trilogy. Because that's like he originated the rule of two. That's basically what his thing is.
Yeah, Kevin J. Anderson. I always liked his work, and I feel bad for the guy because he gets a lot of shit for helping Brian Hebert write the Dune prequel novels, and those were not well received by a lot of the Dune fandoms because, you know, they're not Frank Hebert. Sorry, Herbert. My Cajun pronunciation is showing right there. But go ahead, Miss Snow.
No, that's quite all right. You call him Hebert. I knew who you were talking about.
All right. Real quick before we go forward, we do have some comments I wanted to highlight here.
All right. Coral, yes. Sorry.
He says, "Isn't Disney output has been more good than bad?" I disagree, DM Chromie, but I respect your right to say that. That's, you know, I don't agree with that, but you have every right to say it. I'm not gonna talk down to you about it. Andor, especially episode 8, was freaking awesome. Happy Dinosaur says, "Happy day, Phoenix and guest." Thank you. And Keely Chow is And then, all right, Coral says, "Is the Crystal
Yes.
Skull still
Yes.
considered Scar?"
Yes. Mediocre. It's not mediocre. It is objectively the worst EU novel. And
What
my
about that?
buddy Jonathan Cohn over on BookTube recently reviewed it because he's been reading every Star Trek and every Star Wars novel. And he postulated that it's because the author was originally a Star Trek author, not too familiar with the Star Wars, like a lot of the lore. And there's stuff in there that feels like it's lore breaking in terms of the science of the world. It actually delves slightly into the idea of other dimensions and shit like that. And on top of being slow and ponderous and just not great in general.
See, speaking of that, like that is something that Star Wars, like if you look at like old EU, like multi dimensions, multi timelines, time travel in general, that is a topic that Star Wars never, like it made an effort not to tackle those topics. And it's like this, like, oh, we got the world between worlds, like, you know, aka yes, Dave Filoni's poorly excused reason to get his totally original OC, Please Don't Steal, into the Mandalorian timeline.
That was really where I kind of fell off the Disney Star Wars train. It started during Force Awakens because they started doing stuff that broke the hard science established by the EU. When they jumped to light speed while still inside of a ship, I almost had a conniption. I read, because my favorite novels for the entire EU were the X-Wing novels. I know that science inside and out. And the idea that they would micro jump to the Death Star planet and then just happen to do it quick enough that they would just be on the surface, I almost threw something at the screen. Man, you don't know
the calculation
how
for that would be immense.
And, you know, then, of course, you had the Holdo maneuver that came up in The Last Jedi. That was lore breaking, and no matter how much they try and defend it, it just didn't work. There's plenty of other things. And then Rise of Skywalker it threw every concept of anything out the window and just became an absolute cluster hump.
Yeah,
I
try
disaster
to avoid
of storytelling.
I try to avoid talking crap about the prequels because one, everyone's done it. Everything we said has been said a million times before.
Yeah,
and it's a black hole. It is a black hole for discussion because you can just get sucked into it and talk about like how bad it is for hours and that really not move the needle. So I'd rather
like the midichlorians, and I still don't.
That's fair.
Well, I had a friend that worked on the I think it was the Mayfair or the tabletop role playing game system, and they basically tried to hand wave the midichlorians as a device used by the Jedi to convince the lay people to allow the Jedi to take their kids because they wouldn't embrace the spiritual aspect, and they could blind them with false science.
Blinded by science.
Midichlorians are a creation of Neil deGrasse Tyson in space.
I thought it was
which is why it's so boring and unfun.
Yeah,
wasn't midichlorians like an RPG stat? Oh, yep, Coral, the West End game Star Wars system.
Yeah,
well, then they ended up throwing that away in the sequels with, well, anybody can be a Jedi you just have to have enough training. Well, hell, everybody's special then, so therefore nobody's special.
Yeah, I remember when that happened. I literally used that Incredibles meme, and nobody understood it.
Yeah.
Well, they're sequels fans, so you know they wouldn't understand anything anyway.
Well, they tried to apply. Oh, sorry.
No, they did that for a reason so they could plug in any kind of character they wanted, and this is where you start to see authors. I want to introduce something, so they've got this established property. How are they going to do it? Well, they're going to do it by either introducing new dimensions, time travel, or somehow making it to where they can put any character that they want into that scene. And if it's not originally part of that world, then you need to have a reason that it wasn't discovered by Captain Kirk or somebody else. But they're using it as, this is when it doesn't work. When they use it as a tool to self-insert or to insert the latest acceptable philosophy, it shows it's inauthentic. And this is the reason that it doesn't work. You could have any device in any universe. You could have them discover this incredible thing, and you can actually even retcon it saying, oh, Darth Vader was after this all along. If it was written in the spirit of the original story, it would work. But it's not. It's just written so you can self-insert, and that's why these things don't work. They're inauthentic. And when you have those devices that are simply created so anybody can come along and change the world into what they want. For instance, like with Rings of Power, where you just create something out of whole cloth and then pretend like it belongs to the other world. You're just writing on the back of a dead author at that point, or of a dead.
And that's
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, my argument for that was the reason why it was so poorly received was because they tried to demystify. They tried to apply science to a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
You know, you can't prove or disprove God. You know what I mean?
It really took a lot of the whimsical element and the fantastical element away from it. When your ability as a force, I know they needed some way to show that Anakin was powerful, but did they really? Because if you think about the prequels, they constantly said Anakin was powerful.
Yeah,
I don't feel like they ever really showed
that
Anakin was so much more powerful than anyone else.
I mean, they did in the third. They did in the third movie, like literally him soloing Dooku. Like that's pretty powerful.
I mean, yeah, a little bit. I always just thought, like, if you're going to say someone is so ridiculously overpowered, you would have something that showcased this to an extent that's like, wow, there's no other Jedi can really do that. I'll use, Force Unleashed as an example. Starkiller pulling down the Star Destroyer. Yeah. That should have been an Anakin move.
Amen.
That really should have been something Anakin could do that nobody else would.
The thing
do.
that I'll
Don't say he's powerful. Show it. The
problem with mystifying, the explanations is, you often get like the crappy writers who like, oh, it's magic. That means anything. It's like the Force can do anything. That means like Anakin can shoot rainbows out of his butt. Force rainbows. It's canon now, chuds.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like look at like you can't apply science to like our own spirituality.
I get it, but I'm saying if we're not careful. Oh God,
Movie Bob, is that you?
Somehow Palpatine returned again. But like my problem is if you just say like, oh, it's the Force, it's magic. If you go in the opposite direction, you get an even worse thing where people just have like the most ridiculous things, but they hand wave it away because it's magic, and he gets like the shittiest writing ever.
Well, look at Lord of the Rings.
The movies did do a good bit in showing that yes, with the Force you could do stuff that was not humanly possible, even at times somewhat superhuman, but that there was usually like you were not Saitama walking through the hallways one punching everybody. There was
the Force taxes you. It is physically exhausting.
Yeah,
the Force.
It does, and even in the EU they had limits.
They had like a manometer essentially. Some people had more capacity, like some people had more like could do stuff for more often. The forms, certain forms are more exhausting than others. Like a Taur was like very.
Before
not all Jedi were of equal power and standing. One example was Corran Horn, who was the star of one novel, was I, Jedi. I think it was a Michael Stackpole novel. And in it showcased his transition from being a starfighter with some Force sensitivity to actually being a Jedi, and show that he kind of, he kind of struggled when it came to the levitation aspect.
You see the white box?
You mean besides that white box? No, I don't think I have.
Not really. Hi, you're on live stream.
I can't hear you. You had the aspect of he struggled to like lift stuff with levitation, but he excelled at illusion. You remember when Obi-Wan tricked the stormtroopers? Corran Horn could use the Force way better than anyone else to Force project an illusion and trick people. And he found this out. He tried real hard to levitate a boulder, but when he stopped, everybody was looking up, but the boulder had stayed still. He had tricked them, even other Jedi students, into thinking that boulder had been lifted off the ground. Yeah. So they never really explored that kind of an element there.
They kind of did. There has always been like you have certain classes of Jedi, like the Jedi Counselors, which were better with more of the Force aspect. You have Jedi Guardians. Like that's what the lightsaber colors used to be. That used to be your class. Like blue was the Guardians, green was Counselors, yellow was the Sentinels. Kind of thing. That's what.
There you're getting into the hard sci-fi stuff that they never really explored, because Star Wars was much more about adventure than the militarization of these space knights.
Well, before the prequels came out, like, and they had like, was it the Force lightning blasted back into Palpatine's face to make him all deformed? The concept was that the Force was physically taxing, and it began to manifest based on what you did with the Force. So if you noticed, all of the Sith guys were all like deformed and evil and malicious. You know, they all looked evil essentially, and it wasn't because Mace Windu blasted lightning back in his face. It was
when you become a Sith, you get a +10 to aura farming. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's with the light side too. Like,
yeah, and it's kind of like a play off of, like, you know, as you age, you know, it's like the people who have a more positive life are usually more happy. You know, as they age, they tend to look more beautiful. I mean, look at Erin Snow here. She's lived a very positive life, and she is a gorgeous woman. You know, the positivity but if you're always angry, you're always bitter. Like, you can see it on somebody's face. They got like this perpetual scowl or whatever. You know, but like the people who are happy, they could be like you know, the people who are like was positive and trying to do good. They are gorgeous, like Miss Snow here.
Well,
Now, when it
also,
comes,
Thank you. I appreciate that. But let me say
when it
this.
comes, go ahead.
John, talking about core. That's what we're talking about writing. They had to write in a character. You don't make this character so powerful. And this is where Anakin fails in the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
In the writing, they said, "Oh, he was the most powerful ever," and you kept waiting for a sign of this. You kept waiting for it.
Yeah.
You have to start off by actually nerfing your own character. You should nerf this person at the very beginning. You say, why are they not so able to just be the wave motion gun of humanity? How come they're not able to just destroy an entire planet? Why? Because they've got limitations. Core becomes an interesting character because he has certain limitations. That means that he has to use his mind and his wits in order to actually succeed, or he has to be able to do something better than someone else can do it in order to succeed. He's not just simply there and just blows stuff up. And so
you should say that. There is a Star Wars character that can blow planets up, Darth Nihilus.
Of course there is. There's a way to write an overpowered character. It's very tricky, but it can be done.
Darth Nihilus is freaking scary, though. Like, he is a frightening villain.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's one reason, like, you know, taking it back to the writing aspect, this comes into play with, I learned, and I told this on an interview that I did earlier today, that I've learned almost more from what not to do when it comes to writing than what I want to do from, you know, and positive aspects. I mean, not for nothing, as much as I enjoyed, say, the Sonic comic from the run in the 90s and Archie Comics, there was a lot of really bad writing that happened in that comic that I really wanted to avoid when I started writing. I was like, man, I don't like this. I don't like this inconsistent characterization or these plots that don't have a satisfying end. I don't like the creative directions these have gone. One of the reasons I'm okay with just God, Nick is just falling all over himself somewhere.
Somewhere? Where?
What?
Sorry, I got back.
Yeah, sound like you fell. And part of the reason I know when to kind of jump off of creative endeavors is when the creative juice is lost and they don't know how to get it back. It can become very self-evident, and that's where Star Wars is now, the MCU is now. Because where have I seen it before? The Sonic comic was like that. Man, that went downhill so bad. As granted, it was for kids, but I didn't find out till years later there was political power struggles behind and creative power struggles behind the scenes that affected, Penders and Bowlers and Sega all working together to make it a much more of a subpar product than it had been before. Late WCW, like, they just could not get back on track. And, you know, sometimes they just lose it. You know, they lose you've got to have a very focused creative narrative decision. Don't just start a series and go into it not knowing where it's going to end.
Well,
know when to end things.
I want to focus in on that for a second. I think that's actually really important for any writer. If you're going to create something that goes beyond one story, like let's say you're creating a trilogy of books, comics, whatever, know how your story ends. Know where the journey is going. As long as you know where it is going, you can fill in the rest. But if you don't know the ending, you have no business writing a book.
Yeah.
This is absolutely what everything that we're talking about, the failures, have in common. Ask yourself, what do they have in common? They were trying to milk the IPs for everything they were worth. They were just trying to get another year out of it, another issue out of it. It wasn't about the story itself. It's about just dragging the story on. And as a result, what do you do? How do I come up with something for this? You might think of a cool idea, but it's not really taking the story forward. Any TV series, if it doesn't have a definitive end, it has a point to where it fails. It jumps the shark. It is a sign that your series is coming to an end because it jumps the shark. Literally, Fonzie jumping over the shark in Happy Days.
Hey.
So it happened over and over again in stories where it's being dragged out. It doesn't have that satisfying end. It doesn't end where it's supposed to. And if you're missing that, you're right, Nick, it's not going to work. One of the things, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought that one series that actually did do it right actually was the Halo series and the novelizations that came out of that, especially from Eric Nyland and the anthologies. I think that they did a fantastic job with it. They knew exactly where they were going with it. It's just to fill in the universe, to keep it fresh. And actually, I preferred what happened with Halo. I was okay with it. I think the ending with Cortana especially was right where we needed to be going. It was what was supposed to happen. It had an arc. It satisfied it. It still lived on for well over a decade, if I'm not mistaken.
And I think that's really important is you're not remembered for how you start a series. You're remembered for how you end it. Like there's a phrase that's kind of popped up in recent years of sticking the landing. Like Game of Thrones. Like people don't remember like the early.
I knew this was coming.
Yeah, of course. People don't remember the early series with the world class writing. They remember. Okay, we're an hour and a half in. I'm just gonna say it. They remember Dragon Hitler.
Yeah.
And
for his inability to actually. I think a lot of people would also, look at the Game of Thrones ending as like they could accept the TV ending being bad if the book ending manages to nail it, and we're not going to get that. So
I think we'll get wins.
Believe me, I could go on a lot longer about Game of Thrones, and I don't want to. Are you going to be ending soon? Because I need to jump off. Or
we usually go for about 2 hours. If you want to jump off early, you can.
I do need to go ahead and jump off and help with some supper and get some other things ready because I got my weekend shifts.
But I just want to say this real quick. One example. Chris, I got a bot on Twitch for you, hon. One example I do want to do of sticking the landing is Avatar: The Last Airbender. That is a show that knew exactly what it wanted to do. Season 3 was a bit uneven, but even Avatar at its worst, season 3, it's still a lot better than most stuff. Plus, they ended the show. They defeated the Fire Lord, Aang did his stuff, Zuko got his ending, and time went on. Like, it had a great ending to the series. He got with Katara, they ended the series beautifully, and I think that's why Avatar is still remembered to this day.
I really do got to go ahead and go. I was looking at my own name, about to call you John. Nick, thank you for having me here. Chris, always a pleasure. Mr. Snow, always a pleasure, guys. Sorry, I got to buzz out.
Have a good one.
All right, have a good one. Thanks for having me on. Oh my God.
No, and thank you. Also, I'll probably be getting off here in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I've got some storms coming in. I'm going to have to actually start monitoring stuff. But no, you're right, Nick. I really think that Avatar, because I watched the whole thing. And I loved it. That's actually a period where I started watching animation again. I had a chance. And like I said, I'm older than dirt. So I actually got into that as I'm serious. I'm old. And so me loving Avatar, it was because not only it was stellar writing, they kept the characters in focus. We know who the hero of the story is. We know who the roles are and what roles they play. And while there were breakout stars on there, every one of them has an incredible story. Iroh, of course, being one of my favorite characters of all time because he's older than dirt too. But the fact that they did such an immense job with it was because they knew where the story is going. One of the things we talk about is, do your characters, they have a desire, they have something they love, and you have to get them to that something they love. The story should be driving towards what is their goal? What are they doing?
For example, Lost Kingdom. I know where the story is going. I know how it ends. I know how the second and third book are going to go and whatnot. There's kind of a bit of a thing that happens in the second book that might be a bit controversial, but
no, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm not good. Yeah. But I know where things are going, and even if I don't if I know C, I can figure out B.
Yes. Yeah, it's just a part of the equation. And I think that, you know what, that's actually a brilliant idea. When you look at your books as equations, there's elements that might be missing. And yes, life really happens. Things happen sometimes out of turn or out of place. But the reason that lives become interesting, first of all, is the voice of the storyteller. A good storyteller can make paint drying seem interesting. Mm-hmm. But regardless, that's still not a great story unless it has, once again, the beginning, a middle, and the end. It has to go somewhere. It has to do something. If you're writing a series, that each little piece should be its own arc at some level. So if it did end, you know, that's one of the things about Game of Thrones I think that most people have a hard time with, is that it doesn't really end even in book. It doesn't really have we're driving towards something. We're waiting for that epic series. And I'm going to be praying that actually that Martin does end it. I think that he got thrown off course because the series came out on TV. It came up with its own ending. And now he's having to weave this all back together again. Whatever image that he had in his head to begin with.
Apparently they're working off of his notes.
Yeah. So I think that you have to have that goal in mind. And I think that is probably one of the hardest things for most writers is they write something and they love it and they look down and they say, oh, this is a fantastic story. And they keep writing. Do you know where it's headed? So you can start now to plan at that first book or that second book or that first episode, that second episode, what's going to happen towards the end. So you don't have to go back and retcon something, or you don't have to go back and completely change your story. And if it does suddenly go off course, is your character still going to be who they are? Are they still going to be that person that people love? Because there are stories, the storyline itself sometimes is the star of the show. The story in one of the reasons that Star Wars A New Hope works is because the story itself from start to finish, and this is me talking, this is going to make a lot of people hate me. I believe in that first trilogy. I really do. I loved it. But if you want to be honest, I could live forever just on Star Wars A New Hope. The reason why is it perfectly encapsulates the story. The story itself is the star. We have wonderful characters in it, but each one shines in their own way. It is the heroic end that elevates that story. Then there are other times that people are just in love with a character. They are absolutely in love, for instance, with Conan the Barbarian. You could literally, there are 17 books out there with Conan in it, all of them by Robert Howard.
There are some written by Robert Jordan.
Yes, there are some written by Robert Jordan. And you have the character itself is what makes the story interesting. It's how he responds. But keeping that fresh, even then, can be difficult. You have to know how to keep that character in character and still have him in a different situation each time. But like people, eventually all characters must come to that point where perhaps they're going to pass. And so you have to know when you've reached the end of your ability to keep something fresh, and you need to be able to say, I'm coming to that place in my story. Here's where I'm going to have to step back. And we're going to let this have a satisfying end. You have to decide that before it jumps the shark, before it goes bad. And so if you're thinking that, hey, this is getting a little old, a little stale, I'll refresh it. Think instead about, hey, let's bring this to a satisfying end. Let's get it where it needs to go. Because I think that's what really, when we talked about writers having a problem, I think that's what most of us have a problem with, is we get to that place and we go, how am I going to end my story? That's what stops most writers from actually finishing their story well.
Yeah.
There's Nick. He came back.
Yeah, I had a little glitch thing I had to take care of. I apologize.
You're fine.
Yeah, sorry. It was like, please reload the page, and I'm like, okay. Then I had to log back in. So what did I miss?
You missed a very good discussion, or a what would you call it? It was advice on how to write a good story.
Haranguing about endings, because I'm a big believer in endings. Now let me say this: I love long running series. I love long running stories. Like I said, I've read Conan. I read all of them because I loved it. Tarzan is much the same way. Mm-hmm. I can tell you when Edgar Rice Burroughs starts to fall off the wagon because it was just too many stories. It became formulaic. You knew exactly what was going to happen. He's putting it out.
And you can tell the exact moment when Stephen King quit with the drugs.
Yeah, no junk, no soul.
But it's true. You have your own mojo. You have your own place. You need to be able to pull back and say, this is where this story, I'm thinking I want to make it have a good ending instead of just can I keep it going? Can I keep going for one more thing? You have to have that goal to drive towards, and I think that's actually what almost everything we've talked about today, as far as failures, has been a result of franchises just trying to milk the property for everything it's worth, that rather than delivering a good story.
And this is I think it's not just trying to milk the stories. I'm making the same stories.
Yeah.
Like why are we like, yeah, Star Wars is great. Like, I wouldn't mind a new Star Wars movie like every 10 years or so, but like, why are they constantly mining the same stuff? Like, they've been mining Superman and Batman for so long, they're about to go in the public domain, you know, kind of thing. Like, I've been saying this for what? We need a new pantheon of characters. Like, all the characters we love are at least 20 to 30 years old. You know,
40,
like
50, 100.
100, 150, yeah. You know?
Well, I fear a lot of this is because it's when big business got involved, it became sanitized and corporatized and all this stuff. And unfortunately, the original stories were written by World War II vets, you know, were people who had life experience. And now we're looking at the modern corporations where it's written by a bunch of millennials or Gen Xers that never really did anything with their lives.
I mean, it's not even that, but like a lot of this stuff, like Dune is a product of the 60s.
But like the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of these were aped off of existing media instead of like Tolkien. He wrote the Lord of the Rings while he was in a trench in World War One. You know,
no, he was actually writing the Silmarillion.
Yeah,
started writing Lord of the Rings till like 1940.
I'm trying to make a point. So
okay.
he wrote his stories because he was experiencing life. Hemingway was out in the middle of the ocean, writing his stories. And now we're looking at a bunch of people that are like, I like Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to write a Dungeons and Dragons story. I like Batman. I'm going to make a Batman.
Yeah.
I like Superman. And it's like, you're a Xerox of a Xerox.
It kind of plugs into something that I've noticed is the distillation of inspiration. Okay. So let's take Wonder Woman. She's based off the Greek pantheon. You know, Batman is based off of the pulps of the time.
Yeah.
Superman is like Doc Samson and like the strongman characters. Yep. And then and so we it's like you said, the Xerox of the Xerox. We go. For me, I try to create like with emotions, like for example, like the whole thing with Lost Kingdom is, yes, it's hero's journey, but from Mentor's point of view, I mean, even that is more creatively rich than some of these other people. But like, for me, Lost Kingdom was, what if you did something so horrible that you can't even look at yourself in the mirror? Can you come back from it? It's like the consequences of a choice, and can you forget, like that kind of thing,
Yeah, well, like, and also like, if you look at like when authors stray, writing 101, go with what you know. If you don't know something, don't write about it. If you don't know something and you want to write about it, learn about it. And instead you get like, the prequels where George Lucas is writing romance, and it's like, that guy has no experience in romance. I'm sorry, but it's not like you, or what was it, like, it's sand, you're soft, or whatever. Like, my sister, we went to the theaters and she walked out of the theater, and that's what she took from that movie, was how bad a nerd who never talked to women without it.
But of course, it's gritty. It gets everywhere. Everything here is soft.
Yeah, well, but she like, this is a woman going, who did that work with? Yeah,
Padme really wanted to see Anakin's lightsaber.
Well, like for example, I'm not mentioning anybody here on the panel, but like, if you're in Texas and you're writing about Texas, like, you're writing about Texas, you know that area. Now imagine if you're a Texan and somebody in New York City is writing about Texas.
It happens all the time.
It's like for example, like, I'm sure people that's like, Nick, why do all of your comics take place in Michigan and Metro Detroit? Why Michigan? Because I live here, and I know the area, I know the culture, and like, I'm familiar with it.
Chris, okay, so this happens to Texans all the time, and I'm telling you right now, it's one of the reasons people talk about Texas. Smokey and the Bandit So he's traveling from whatever to Paris, Texas. He is driving all the way over there. And this also happened in the movie Paris, Texas. It doesn't look anything like Paris, Texas. They're driving through East Texas. East Texas is the piney woods. It looks like the East Coast. It's wall-to-wall trees. There's no open space at all. And ththey people come up and they have this wonderful scene, Smokey and the Bandit, and he's booking through that area. And it's a desert. Y'all, come on. And so, yes, you write what you know. But if you're writing about something you don't know, you can actually save the day. And that is by having a really dumb character. It is. Thank you. New York City.
That sounds like somebody who gets their writers from New York City.
That's right. So what I'm saying is that you can actually write that kind of story if you don't know, by writing your main character being either so naive or so dumb that somebody else has to explain to them. And they can if you do this through their eyes, they don't know what's happening. They can just go, it looks like magic, or something like that.
I wish John was still here.
Yeah, you can actually save it. What did that say about East Texas?
It's
East Texas is mid Louisiana. They're the same.
No, it is true. That it's like,
I wish John was here because John is Cajun, so he'd have some words for that.
Yeah, East Texas is literally, there's parts of it that are like the big thicket. It's Louisiana basically, with a little bit of Texas snaking going on there. But there's when you write what you know, it's awesome. If you're going to write about something you're unsure about, keep it in the voice of a person who does not know what's happening. Put that, make your main character reflect that part that you know, and then they can learn from someone else, or they can look up what's happening, or they can say, I didn't understand what happened back there, and they'll go, you don't need to know, honey. It's like
let me give you an example of this kind of stuff. So I was writing this one comic book set in like modern day Detroit, and there's a funeral, and then there's a wake, and the editor was like, oh, wakes happen before the funeral, and I'm like, I have never been to a funeral, and that has had the wake before the funeral. It's always after the funeral, where you like go, you eat, you hang out a little bit after the funeral. And the comic is set in the same area I live in.
Yeah.
And we had like this big argument about it. I'm like, this is my area. This is my area that like, then they might happen in your area. Which, by the way, the editor lived like a couple hours north of me, so it's like, I don't know where this came from.
How old was your editor?
I think she was in like her 40s or 50s at the time.
All right, so let me tell you what this comes from. She probably had a grandmother or somebody who told her this. Wakes used to come before the funeral. Why? Because it is to wake the dead. They didn't have a way of telling whether people or not were really completely dead. You would have such a loud party. You would have people come by and they would handle the corpse. They would actually shake them. They would do things. They would bang on pots and pans. It was so if this person really wasn't dead, if they were going to revive, they would revive during. That's why it is called a wake. Now, you have the reception in Texas. The reception is afterwards. You go to the reception or the family dinner, as it's called, and you have a dinner for the family. And a lot of times that'll be the party. Now the two are melded into one as you got into younger generations where somebody's already, they're taxidermy, they're stuffed, y'all. They ain't going to be waking up from that. So now you've combined the two, and that's the wake and the reception are both. And there afterwards, that is more modern. So the wake.
Yeah, and it's like.
Thank you. Sit with the dead.
Like I get that. Like I totally get that. But here's the thing. This comic was set in Detroit. I live in Metro Detroit. This is my same area. This is my culture, And like, if I said it in Texas, then they might have had a thing like for example, don't know the area, like me, like, oh, wakes happen beforehand. Let's say this story happens in Texas, and I had the wake afterwards. Then the editor would be right, say, actually, like let's say Snow, let's say you're my editor, my Texas editor for authenticity. You tell me, Nick, they have it before the funeral, and you would be right because that's your culture. It's I don't know, it's weird.
I think it's actually an age thing. I think actually that's something else that comes up that we don't talk about. You have, most of the time when we're writing pretty much to our own age group. And that will usually, you have to make sure that you're writing, if you know your readers are going to be younger than you, you better have an idea of what it is that they're interested in, of what means something to them. You can't be so topical that your book is out of date 3 years from now. You really don't want to. That's why fantasy and Herman Hunter. He's from Michigan, baby.
Oh yeah, I've met him. He stalked me at one of my cons and harassed the table for like 3 hours. I'm by the way, I'm for everyone. I'm joking. He did visit me at the table. We had a good conversation. He bought some of my books and then he left. So I'm just trying to I don't want any misunderstandings. I was just joking there. So.
Herman is awesome. I saw him at BaseCon. And I think that we have a tendency to think, well, our audience sees everything through our eyes. So first of all, if you're writing a topical book, and I heard this the other day from another person saying that publishers are looking for something that's going to sell right now. It's whatever's selling right now, and it should be topical. It should be something that fits in with whatever conversation is happening right now. If you're writing a novel and you're wanting it to be a classic that may survive 50 years from now, you're probably not going to be wanting to write a topical thing with certain language in it that may date it too much.
Yeah,
like
rap music,
or I'm trying to think. Calling someone a social justice warrior or an SJW. That's more of a 2015 to 2017 term.
Yeah.
Now, nowadays, we kind of use different language. Or another example, like calling somebody a himbo, or a bimbo. Calling someone a bimbo instead of a thought. Because like back in like the 90s and 2000s, we called someone a bimbo. Nowadays, we call them a thought.
Well, dude, look at 90s rap. It's so damn topical that people today listen to it, like especially Zoomers and millennials, and they're like, I have no idea what the hell this song is about.
Like, what the frick is government cheese?
Well, no, there's like Dre Day by Dr. Dre on The Chronic. He's like dissing Eazy-E. You're watching the video and you're like, I don't know who these people are. It's like an inside joke that I'm not on the inside.
It's like, even worse if you watch comedy routines. I remember watching listening to this one comedy routine from Robin Williams in the 80s. He starts going off about Reagan, like whatever Reagan politics is going on. Like, I don't even, like, it's funny, but I have no idea what's going on. It's funny just because Robin Williams is funny. He can make anything funny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Knowing your target audience, though, I think, like, if you can nail that, the rest of it's gravy, because you have a direct communication to that group, and it's like you're having a conversation with them.
Well, that's something.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about indie authors. Like, that's one of the advantages we have over ThreadPub, is we have more of a direct line to the very people who read our books. And so we're better able to tailor our books for the people who are actually buying them.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think that's it. We've talked before about if you try to please everybody, you'll end up pleasing no one. Everybody.
Yeah.
Well, but in TradPub, a lot of times they are trying to please everyone. They don't know where this book will land, so they want it to be sort of a broad appeal. Well, broad appeal makes it usually very flavorless in a lot of ways.
Homogenous.
And mostly, yes, it's homogenous. And most recently for me, I was up and I decided to do a little thought experiment, and I went to Grok and I said, okay, because you can actually ask Grok to look at your Twitter feed, tell you what you're doing right or wrong. So I said, what is at Watcherdam doing wrong? And I said, using the word revolution, because it's a sensitive word, and that if I need to have broader appeal, I need to tone down the extreme language. My core readership likes wrestling. My core readership enjoys fighting, and my core readership is men that are in their 30s, actually, between 30 and 50. And I have some women readers. That's true, but I'm not going to sell something to my readership by toning down the language, by making it more acceptable to somebody that's not ever going to buy the book.
Yeah, that's true.
For me. And so, and I think that we have a tendency to say, okay, and this is where I would caution, don't ever assume that you have to write to only a certain demographic. Mm-hmm. I'm a 62-year-old woman. I have a successful book that is marketed to men in their 30s. The reason why, because I know my audience, I know who they are, I understand the pain that they're going through, and don't tell me how. I know this because I have a son that is a little bit younger than that, and I have.
Wait, are you saying you have empathy?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and so when I wrote these stories, it's like, this is what they're missing. They wanted these characters, and it's not happening. They're not getting these heroes that they're wanting. And I grew up at the knees of a man who was a World War II veteran. I listened to his stories. He told me stories of real heroism, real danger. And I also lived my life as a firefighter and an EMT. And that's what I've done. And this is me. I've been on scenes that were so dangerous we were expecting that we could possibly die. And en masse.
I think, like, honestly, if we can give any advice to writers, is get some life experiences. You know, like spend your 20s doing stuff. You know, it can be anything. Join the military, become a firefighter, Peace Corps, volunteer at your local animal shelter. Like, let's just spend some time living life. You know,
don't look at yourself and say, "Well, I can't write for that audience." The story that you have will be told through your voice. There should be someone in that story that people might assume would be you. There's somewhere you're going to have a voice, and it needs to resonate. It needs to be authentic. I don't want to write as if I'm a 20-year-old man. That's not what I'm going to be doing. I have my author's voice, I have the narrator's voice, and then I have other characters that I'm able to fill in. But you don't always match your audience. And I think this is one of the things that indie authors have a real advantage over. Had I gone to a publisher and had I said, okay, I really want to write this story, they would go, you're a 62-year-old woman. You need to be writing about the day.
I think Snow got a little bit too base there.
Oh.
You're cutting out, Miss Snow.
Yeah, it was based. I'm sorry. Yeah, the storms are coming. I know. It's like.
All right. Do you need to go?
Here? I'm gone.
Video.
We hear you.
Yeah. Okay. You can hear me. Okay. I've actually I'm a storm spotter. Actually, I'm a Skywarn coordinator for my county. A lot of y'all already know that. Actually, storm chase back when I was able to do that. And I'm still sending out my spotters and stuff. So I'll go out and stand in my yard when there's a tornado coming. I do not care. I am not afraid. She goes like.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I could be scared to death, but I'm still woman enough to go out there and face the storm. So I'm about to have to do that right now. But fantastic discussion, Nick, especially. I know that we talk a lot about, we look at the different things that we've loved in our lives. We love Star Wars. We love Star Trek. We love Halo. We love all these things. But you are right. We have to create new properties. The greatest stories have not been told from the perspective of, I'm going to tell Batman for the 100th time. It comes from something new and different that is born out of your own life. Go live your life and tell the story as only you can tell it. Do it authentically and bring the people what it is they crave. And that is your story.
Agreed.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I love you.
And thank you, Miss Snow. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, darling.
Have a good one.
Chris, you're awesome, Chris. I love you, Nick.
Love you too.
Pray I don't get wiped out by a tornado here, y'all. I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers.
So I will say this episode actually has been pretty successful. Like usually we get like 40 to 60 people on Twitter. We've had 209 views on Twitter.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so if you're watching us on Twitter, thank you very much. So we're about 158 in, so we're gonna kind of start to wrap up here a little bit. So like the stream if you haven't, sub if you also haven't. We got some good stuff coming up. Guards of the Lost Kingdom. I'm going to reconvene with my editor here in the next week or so. He's currently a bit indisposed, but once he's back in the saddle, we'll kind of see where we go. We're going to do a third draft. Hopefully that's the last draft. I'm aiming to have the book out by August, so like it's getting really close. It's actually really exciting, honestly. And then Screechers back on track. I got the first 2 pages, and then pages 3 and 4 will be delivered today. I've been texting with the artist a little bit during the stream. I don't know if you guys saw that. Tomorrow we're doing Cyberpunk. Sunday we're doing Pokemon. Talking about Pokemon. Nyx is going to be there with Caster, and then on Tuesday we're doing Golden Sun. So Chris, what do you got going on? Do you have like something you're going to be launching next week?
Yeah, that's right. Friday, May 23rd on Michael Bancroft's channel, The Lucent Comic. I'll be launching Infinitale Chronicles #2. This one's been a long one in the making, so I'm definitely excited to get this one out. It's 120 pages, full color graphic novel, fantasy adventure. There's 3 editions.
Mhm.
Standard edition, alternate art edition, so it's the same story, same 120 pages, just done by a different art team. And then there's the manga edition, which is 180 pages. It's kind of a trade paperback of the first book and the second book. It's in black and white.
All right. So, yeah, so you won't be here next week,
That's right.
but you'll be returning the week after.
Uh-huh.
Because you're launching on Bancroft, from what I hear. You awesome person, you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big deal. Launching on Bancroft's a big deal. So,
Oh, yeah.
we will be doing an episode. It might not be a Friday Night Frenzy. I might do a game stream. I don't know. I have to talk to some people because I'm going to bring in a sub for that week. But I'll have you more details in the next few days. But this has been Nick from the Think Express. And remember, I can only show you the door. You don't have to walk through it.